Hello folks, and welcome to this video on using WebdriverIO with TypeScript. In this video, we will be exploring how to set up and use WebdriverIO with TypeScript and write efficient automated tests for your mobile applications. If you're new to WebdriverIO or TypeScript, don't worry. We'll start from the basics and work our way up. We'll cover everything you need to know, including how to install and configure WebdriverIO, write tests using TypeScript, and how to run the test using Mocha Test Runner. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of how to use WebdriverIO with TypeScript and write reliable automated tests that can help you catch bugs and ensure that your mobile applications are functioning as expected. So without further wait, let's get started. So before we move ahead towards working on a demonstration like how to configure and install WebdriverIO, let's first understand what actually WebdriverIO is and how do we use it with TypeScript. So in this video, basically I'll be covering up the Android mobile automation using WebdriverIO with TypeScript. So what is WebdriverIO? WebdriverIO is a test automation framework that is built to automate your web as well as mobile applications. And it can be used to automate web applications. Web applications basically refer to automating the websites using Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, browsers, etc. It can also be used to automate native as well as hybrid mobile applications. So ideally, you can automate both Android as well as iOS applications and the different application types like native app or an hybrid app. And this framework can also be used to run the unit or component test of web components in the browser. Next, let's understand why do you want to use WebdriverIO with TypeScript. The first point is it's easy setup using package installations, easy configurations for the project using different config files, support for libraries like Mocha, Jasmine, JUnit, etc. And also, this is the most common reason that I may suggest here is TypeScript is a very popular language and most of the projects are using it. So developers can also be onboarded with the test automation if you are using test automation if you're using TypeScript for test automation. And you can also pair with the developers for resolving your queries or for writing the test. For example, if a developer is free and they want to get onboarded for the test automation suite and they want to contribute towards test automation suite as well, they can easily get onboarded. And also if the tech stack is the same, like if you're writing the automated test on the same tech stack that is being used for the application, it's a win-win situation for both developers as well as the testers, because the developers can actually help you out with the issues if you're facing with regards to any technical problems or as such, and they can help you out with the troubleshooting as well. So we just understood like why we are using WebdriverIO with TypeScript here. With all these things, I think it's now time to move ahead and see how to configure and install WebdriverIO as well as TypeScript and how can we use it with the project. Let me open the terminal first. Let's create a new directory here. And I'll switch to this directory. Now, before I move towards installing anything, I'll be using this documentation for WebdriverIO setup. First, we'll set up TypeScript on our machine because installation of TypeScript is necessary as we want to use it for writing the test. So it says that we need to install TypeScript using this command. I'll just copy this command from here and run it in the browser. Let me remove this $sign from the start. So it will install TypeScript on my machine. That has been done. Next, let's move ahead and install WebdriverIO. So for that, we'll just need to run this command npm init. So I'll just copy this command from this website, just paste it over here and press enter key. Now you don't have to do anything. The configuration, it will start the configuration, and it will ask you different set of questions. WebdriverIO has a very good utility for this, for setting up the project. Now, if you see, there's a WDIO configuration wizard that has come up, and it says that a project was detected at this path. So my current path was the users and then the folder learning, and I'll say that it's correct. Yes. Again, it asked me another question like, where do you want, where should your test be launched? So local or browser. So currently I'll be using local here because I'm using it for end-to-end testing. Next is it is asking me, where do you want to run the, where is your automation backend located? So currently I'll be running this on my local machine. So I'll select the first option on the local machine. The next is, which framework do you want to use? So this I'll be using Mocha as we discussed earlier. I'll press enter. It is the most important question for configuration to note here. It is asking me, do you want to use a compiler? And since we are using TypeScript, we need to select this TypeScript over here and press enter key. And next it is asking me to auto generate some test files if you want that. So currently I don't want these test files to be generated. I'll press N, move ahead. And then it asks me the next questions like, which reporter do you want to use? So here I'll be using the spec reporter by default. I don't have to do anything. I'll just select this. You can make a selection by pressing the spacebar key on your keyboard and press enter. Do you want to add a plugin to your test setup? So I'll just add this wait for, press a spacebar key to select it and press enter. Next, do you want to add a service to your test setups? Now, this is the most important, second most important after TypeScript, because TypeScript is a programming language that we wanted the compiler to use. We wanted the compiler to use TypeScript for compiling the test. And then the service. So here we want to run the mobile test. Hence, for that, we need to select Appium. So I'll deselect the Chrome driver because I'm not running anything on the browser here. I want to run the test on the mobile application. I want to run the test for Android mobile application. So I'll select Appium and press enter. And it's asking me for base URL. It's not required for me. It's an optional thing. So I'll not provide any value here. Press an enter key. And lastly, it is asking me, considering all the configuration that we have set earlier, it is asking me if I want to run npm install. So I'll say yes and press enter. So it has already set up TypeScript. That is success. It is installing all these packages here which are required to run the test. And if you see, it says that you have successfully set up the project at this path. And if you want to visit further, if you want to check out the WebDriver project, you can check out it on GitHub. This is the link here. And we want to run the test, we need to move to this website, to this folder location, and then run the command npm run wdio. Now let's move to the learning folder that we just created and see. So this is the learning folder. It created a folder called node modules, where all the packages, dev dependencies have been installed here. And there's a tsconfig.json and wdio.conf.ts file also been generated. These are the most important file for running the test. So this tsconfig.json actually helps us to compile the TypeScript project, and WDIO configuration file is the heart or the key or the core component of WDIO framework. It helps us to run our test, and it has all the settings updated in this TypeScript file. So let me open the VS Code, and let's open the folder called learning. So here I can see there's a wdio.ts file generated here. The auto compile options and everything have been already set here. Port is also already set, max instances and everything. All the by default configuration settings have been updated here. We also have a tsconfig file here where the mode resolution, module and types and everything have been set here. There's a package.json file already be generated. You can check this file to see what all dependencies have been installed. So we see that Appium service is installed, WDIO client service is installed, local runner, Mocha framework, spec reporter, TS node, TypeScript, and whatever things that we selected during the configuration. All these things have been installed, and package.json have been created with that. Also, you can see these are the versions. So for WebdriverIO, we are using the latest version, that is 8.6.1. that is currently in place now. And for running this test, as we saw in the browser, in the terminal, sorry, it gave us a command here like npm run wdio. So the same command, it's been set here. So when we run WDIO, it will actually hit this command here, WDIO, and run this config file. So based on this config file, whatever specs have been provided, so this is the path from where the test will be picked up, and accordingly the test will be run. These are the different capabilities. Now this is just a sample project. I'll close this project for now, since it's the installation and everything has been complete. I already have one project to showcase, which I've created using the same command that we just saw in the previous part. I'll just open that project, and I'll explain you what all different things that have been updated in this project here, and how do we run the test as well. But before we move on, let me tell you about the boilerplate code, because this project has been built with referring to the Appium boilerplate code here. This is the reference code that I have took. I've took the reference from this particular repository on GitHub. It has all the code examples here for setting up the project with the WDIO. So you can make use of this project as well. This is the reference project. It helped me a lot for setting up the project and running the test. The other part is the demo app. So before running the Android test, I would also like to show you the demo app here, which we will be using in demonstrating the Android application automated test here. So this is the native demo app that has been built by the WebdriverIO team, and we will be using the Android APK file of this application here. This is the application we will be using here, and accordingly, this is the APK file that is being downloaded and used in this project to demo out all the tests here. Moving to the test now, like I said in the previous section, so there are some multiple lines or been put here that have been taken from the reference Appium boilerplate project that we just saw in the GitHub, and these are the different values that is been put here. So the tsconfig.json is set. Next is the config. So there was just one config file that was created, like which has all the things. Now to make it more maintainable and easy to read and maintain in the future as well, there are three different config files that have been generated. Here the main important file, or the heart of this file, that wdio.font.ts that we saw in the previous section, this is the same likewise file here, where we have the basic capabilities or basic configuration settings with respect to WDIO framework. WebdriverIO framework has been set here. Runner is set as local. There are specs as well, capabilities. Now the specs and capabilities have been picked from the different file that I'll just show in some moment. The log level can be set up here. You can set up the values like info, debug, or warn as well, like as per your requirement. The base URL can also be set here, when wait for timeout, connection retry timeout, and everything. Now the framework is also been set as Mocha here, and the reporter is set as spec. Mocha options, its a UI is BDD, timeout. These are the default values that come as a pre-installation part when we run the configuration setup. So these are been by default set by WebdriverIO itself. I haven't set all these values. These are the by default values that have been set. The next is the capabilities part. Now, as you know, like when we are running the Android test, we need to pass on certain Appium desired capabilities as well. Now, one more important thing to note here is, under the hood, WebdriverIO uses Appium, it's Appium only. So it will be running the test using Appium. So we need to have the Appium also locally installed on our machine before we run the test. If you're not having the Appium locally installed, you need to run the npm command, like npm install -g Appium @next, if you're installing the latest Appium here. So you need to have that Appium installed on your local machine. Otherwise, it will give you an error that you need to have the Appium locally installed, and then only it will start running the test. Because under the hood, WebdriverIO uses Appium service only. So it will be using Appium. So we need to have that installed here. Now, once the Appium is installed, we need to have the configurations also been set up here, like the capabilities. So if you want to run the test on Android or iOS or any other platform, you need to provide certain capabilities like the platform name. So the platform name is Android, since we will be running the test on Android platform. The max instances, this is used for parallel run. So here we are not running anything in parallel. So it would be 1 here. And this is the by default value. The next is the device name. Now, when it comes to device, let me show you, like I have installed the Android Studio, and this is the emulator that I have created here, Pixel 2 API 33. That is the name of the AVD that I have created. And that is the same name that I need to provide here. The platform version again, and I need to see it in the Android Studio itself. Here you see Android 13.0, Google Play ARM 64. So Android 13.0 is the version. So 13.0, I'll put it here as the platform version. The orientation would be portrait, and we will be using UI Automator too for automating the things with Appium. Now, finally, we have the app path. So I have already downloaded the APK and put it in the app folder, which is inside the root folder of the project. I have created another folder called app, and inside that I have the Android-native-demo app APK file here. Now, the same has been updated here. Now, there's one more thing here, like join process.cwd. So it will actually take up to the root path of the project, and after that append this path here. So it becomes easy for the test to recognize that it is available inside the inside this project, and you need to find for the app folder and then the APK file. And finally, the app activity and app wait activity have been updated as main activity. So it will wait for this activity to get started. So once the test gets once you run the test, it will check out for this app activity and will start the app and wait here, and will wait for the Appium to execute the next command for running the different tests that we have provided in the scripts, automation scripts, and then the no reset and the command timeout. And finally, we are exporting the config as a by using this line, exports.config equal to config. Now, finally, we'll move towards the next file called config services. Now, this actually helps us to set the service. So since we are using Appium service for running the test, so the same has been set here, like config.services, and then the service would be Appium, and the command will be relax security equal to true. This is an additional command which is needed to tell Appium that we can execute local ADB commands and to automatically download the latest version of Chrome driver if that is available. And then finally, the port would be 4723, and then the export the default config here. Now, one thing to note here is in the shared config file, this is the main core component. We don't have anything as port or as such here. So the same will be put here. The same will be put here using this config.port. And finally, I forgot to tell you one thing more about the specs. Now, since in the shared configuration file, we are not providing any specs here, then the same will be picked from here. The config specs will be picked as from the test file. Since we are providing everything in the test folder, inside that we have a specs file, and then we have android.spec.ts. So that is the reason why I put it as a star here. If there are more files, multiple files, every file will be picked up as a part of running different tests. So the first test will be run on this Android. Then if there are any other files, then all of the files one by one will be picked up and the test will be executed. So currently we have just Android spec file available here. Now, next is let's move towards writing the test. So the configurations are set now. We have the app also available, and the TS config and everything has been set here. Now it's the time to move towards page objects. Now, let me show you the application. This is the application. Before we move towards writing the test, let's discuss about the automation strategy that we'll be using here to run the test. So the first test that I'll be using will be to start the application, and on the home page, I'll verify whether this title is displayed as WebDriver, and I'll verify the text using WebDriver. Okay, so the expectation will be this text will be had a WebDriver. The next text will be, I'll move to the login page. You can enter any W email or password here and then press on login button. It will show a message like successfully logged in. So let me try that as well. test@email.com, and then let me put the password as 1234567 8 and then click on login. So it will show the message title as success and then the message text as you are logged in, and then with an OK button here. So the next scenario will be to come to the login page here by clicking on this menu button here, menu link here, login, and then find the email field, find the password field. In the email field we'll be putting up a new email value by using the send keys, and then ideally with the password, and then click on the login button. Once we click on the login button, it will show a message which has a title as success and message text as you are logged in, and then finally we'll click on the OK button. Now for these things I have used pages. I've created different pages. So this is the home page. So all the code with respect to the locators will be put up in this home page class here. Let me open the Appium Inspector as well. Start the Appium server. This is required for Appium Inspector and not for WebdriverIO, because WebdriverIO internally programmatically starts the Appium server before running the test, and accordingly does all the configuration on its own. We don't have to write a boilerplate code for starting the server or manually start the server and run the test. So it starts the server here. I already have a capabilities for WebdriverIO been built here. I'll start the session. Okay, so the session is started. Now, first case was to identify the element with the text here as WebdriverIO. So ideally the text is WebDriver. Now I see an XPath over here. So this XPath ideally is not recommended to be used in mobile automation test. So ideally we should refrain from using XPath here. So what we'll do is we'll search for another type of locator. So I see a text value has WebDriver. We can use make use of UI selector here. So the same UI selector. So the text is WebDriver and the class name is android.widget.textView. And I have used this is the way we can locate the element for the WebDriver text. So the first I'll select the I'll make the selector using UI selector, then pass on the text that this is the text and then the class name here. And after that I have to locate the title. I need to pass on await $, and then Android equal to $, whatever selector that we have given. So what it will do is when it will fetch for or try to locate the element, it will search for this selector out there and see if the locator is of the element is find out. It will try to find an element out there. So if you want to verify if the locator that you have created is fine or not, or is working or not, you can use this UI automated selector and paste the code here and then click on search. So we find one element here and it just highlights that element that is been found on the mobile application, and that's WebDriver. So ideally this should work fine. And finally I'll return a get text. So I want this locator to return a text, and ideally I'll do that using this get text method. And then once this is done, I'll find, if I go to the test, you'll find that the page title, whatever title we get, then we expect that to be WebdriverIO. And this is the first test. This is how the scenario 1 gets completed here. The next scenario that we talked about was related to login. So now let's first find out the element for this login page here. So before going to the login page, we need to click on the login link here. So how do we do that? So first point is, again, if I click here and try to find an element, it shows some a kind of XPath here, which is actually not recommended. So below, just below this, just above this XPath in the DOM, you see a content description, and that says the value as that has an accessibility ID, login, XPath, and all such values. We can use this accessibility ID over here. So we'll click on it, and to use the accessibility ID, let's go to the home page again. And in the login menu, if you see, I want it to return a accessibility ID login here. This is the text that I've copied from here. And after that, I'll just write a new method here, like open login screen, and then login menu that click. You can also make a custom method here for opening all the menus, where you pass on the different accessibility ID that you ID links. Like for example, for web view, you'll find the value as web view. So you can create another method like open menu screen, and in that accept a parameter for menu name, and ideally return the accessibility ID, whatever you get as a parameter. And finally, you can use it while and in the end in the method parameter whenever you want to open the respective menu out there. So this particular method, open or login screen, for time being, we will locate a login link using this locator strategy using accessibility ID, and finally click on the login menu here. Once we move on to the login page, so I have this open here, and let me refresh here to so it shows me the login page. And let's look at the email field here. Email field is pretty much same, like we have the accessibility ID. For password also we have the accessibility ID. For login button, let's see if we have an, yeah, we do have the accessibility ID called as button-login. And we can make use of all these accessibilities ID to locate our elements and actually pass on some values in the respective fields. So these three fields, input email, input password, and in login button, will actually locate for the elements. And ideally, we have created one login method here, which will accept two parameters, email and password, as a string. And ideally, it will set the value for the email and password field. This set value actually helps us to send the keys to the respective text fields, and it will send the respective strings that we have set here. And then finally it will click on the login button. After that, we need to identify the success message title as well. So for doing that, let's put some dummy data inside this field. Seven, 8. Here we are. And let me refresh this, so our locator also notices and refreshes the screenshots on the page. And we see a title here. We have an ID locator here named as alert title. And for the text, we have a message. That's also an ID locator. Now, when it comes to WebdriverIO, passing on the ID, we have a different way of writing this. We need to write ID equal to and then the actual ID value here. So it doesn't support the CSS selector here. Since it's on mobile automation, we need to write on this value. You can find the more details on the selectors page on WebdriverIO about learning how to write, use different selectors on WebdriverIO. So for this, we'll be using the ID. Both of these things will be updated here. And then finally, we need to export the default login page here. And ideally, we'll call out the different steps that we want to run for the second scenario, that is logging into the application and then verifying the success message. So first we will be logging into the so ideally this scenario will run first. We'll be on the home page. Once the title verification is been done, it will move to the login screen here. And that will be done from here to here. It will click on this login link here, enter the value into both of these fields, email and password, and then the expectations will be run, like the success message title should equal to success, and the success message should be you are logged in with an exclamation mark. Let me quickly run this. Before I run the test, let me also show you the package.json. So we have three different configuration files here. So which file do we need to supply in the script that actually runs the test? So we need to supply the Android conf. So this is the file that we need to supply in the uh, test runner, or the script that runs the test. So if you go to package.json, you can find the path. You need to provide the correct path of the configuration file that you want to run. So ideally, I have updated the value as the key as wdio, and the value is this command will run. It will be wdio config slash wdio.android.conf.ts, which is this file. And inside this file, there is a spec configuration that is available. It will tell the WebdriverIO to run this Android spec.ts file, and all our tests will be executed. Now, let me quickly run the test for you. Let me first close all the unnecessary things. I don't want the inspector also. I'll close this. We would require the emulator over here. I'll be keeping this running in the background, because if I don't keep it running, the test won't run and it will fail, saying that the emulator is not recognized or not available. So let me run it from the terminal here. Let's open a new terminal, close this, run the clear command. Okay. npm run wdio and press enter key. I'll open the emulator here on the side so we can see what's running out there. So you see the tests are running fine here. It entered some value in the email and password, and now it clicked on the login button. Message is displayed, verification done, and we see the spec reporter also getting generated here, like this Android or mobile automation test. Since we are using Mocha framework here, the title is being displayed. So whatever is displayed in the describe section here is displayed here, and in the it section, it showed like should check the title on home page and should log in into the app successfully. So it took around 15 seconds to run the test, and one test was passed successfully. It ran on this emulator 5554. This is the internal name for the emulator out there on Android 13. And these are the different WDIO logs as well. It was fine. You can see multiple things coming up in the logs, like it was locating an element, it found an element with an ID, and it resulted some values out there, and so on. So you can find a whole lot of things with the WDIO in the log section as well. And then finally, after everything was run, the service and the local runner shut down the required things that were run for the respective test. I hope you learned something new from this video. Do like my channel, subscribe, and share it with your network, and keep learning. Thank you so much.